What's up, guys? This is Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall market. I'm also going to break down why tomorrow is going to be a very important day as we have big news that could be coming out involving the government shutdown ending. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. So right now, looking at Tesla stock, there's a lot of weakness on the charts. We keep on making lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, and lower lows. And I see a risk of Tesla continuing to fall back down towards 425 and then 422 to 420. If that fails us, we could be looking for even more downside. In the after hours, SPY is selling off right now. The QQQ is also selling off, and there are risks of these charts coming back down to fill their gaps, and that could also be negative for Tesla stock. So I do anticipate downside as the most likely possibility. I'm going to break down exactly why that is by going over the news for Tesla and the markets. So let's talk about Tesla news. One of the reasons why Tesla was weak today is because their overall sales are showing some weakness. For example, their October sales are down about 25% compared to what we saw in September in the North American region. On top of that, we're also seeing a slowdown in their Chinese sales, a slowdown in the European sales, and a lot of different continents. Not the best of news, at least for Tesla. We're seeing headlines about that. Simultaneously, two of their very key project managers for the Model 3 and their Cybertruck have left the company. I went over this news for the past 2 days. It's still making a lot of headlines. So lots of negative news for Tesla. Despite this, Wedbush is saying that Tesla will likely outperform the market, and the price price ratio is dropping, which shows that even though Tesla has the potential to bounce in the future, for the short term, we're still looking more bearish because of that. On top of this, know that Wednesdays tend to be green about 48% of the time, and Thursdays tend to be green about 47.05% of the time. Thursdays tend to be a weaker day for Tesla. With that being said, let's talk about what's going to likely happen, at least for the overall markets, because I think that news involving Tesla is just part of the picture. I think the overall market is going to likely see some downside after what's about to happen because the US House of Representatives is currently voting on the agreement by the Senate to end the government shutdown. I believe there's two possibilities. Either they reject it and they end up not approving it and they have to continue to vote and renegotiate. If that happens, that's bearish. Even if they do end up approving it and the government shutdown comes to an end, however, I still think the market could still dip because now I think that the news is priced in. The market did go a bit higher today in the morning, which was a sign that the market was still pricing it in. And then once we got the rejection, that could be our sign that this is the market rejecting. As the saying goes, buy the rumor, sell the news. So if anything, we saw this nice pump approaching the big news, but then once the news comes out, the market could turn more bearish. So let's talk about what's going on. So let's go over this real quick, then I'll break down exactly what the stock market will likely do. So what happened was the Senate came up with this agreement to keep the government funded. This would also help to restart the distributive food assistance, pay hundreds of thousands of federal workers, and revive lots of different systems and services that the government provides. It would also help to keep the government funded up until January 30th. This is the agreement that the Senate has passed. Now, the Senate has passed it, but now it's left for the House of Representatives who are currently voting upon this agreement. If they support this, this would keep the government funded up until January 30th because once this passes the House, it goes to President Trump's desk, and he already said that he will support the bill to keep this going. He's obviously going to have to sign it, but it all depends on the House of Representatives. Can they approve this or not? Now, regardless of what they do, I just want to note that I think that this news is mostly priced in after how much SPY has bounced, and that regardless of what the decision is, there is a downside risk. On top of this, let me just add that tomorrow is going to be Thursday, November 13th. We have some bill auctions in the morning. That's pretty much it. Initial jobless claims and CPI were scheduled to come out, but they have been delayed because of the government shutdown. So here's what the White House said. They said that it's unlikely that the federal jobs report or the CPI reports that were due to be released in October would be published after the government shutdown ends because according to what we're hearing from economists and the Department of Labor, what's happening is that various agencies, especially the Department of Labor and Commerce, they have to basically wait and get everything together first, meaning that the shutdown of the federal government has delayed nearly all federal economic data releases for September and October. And while the shutdown could be nearing an end, it's going to take some time for the statistical agencies to work through the backlog of releases. meaning that even if the government comes back in action, it's going to take them some time to get everything together. They have to re-update the schedule. They have to get everything back together for all this data. That's what we're hearing from the Labor Department's Bureau of Labor Statistics. So this means that even if the government shutdown ends tomorrow, that does not guarantee all the data just starts coming out. It's going to take some time. They have to reschedule everything, and the data can start to be released as soon as next week. That's what we're reading so far. So, most likely, what this means is even if the government shutdown ends, we're going to most likely not see the CPI data or initial jobless claims data yet. It may not come until next week. All right. So, other pieces of data include this. We also have AMD doing very well. We got a nice bounce after the CEO, Lisa Su, is telling us that we should be expecting good revenue growth from the company, and their AI data services are doing well. And for earnings, we basically have Walt Disney announcing earnings before market open tomorrow, and then minor earnings for the rest of the week. Also, the fear and greed index is currently at fear. That's making up the majority of sentiment. Momentum is more greedy, but keep in mind that we're going to see if this lasts or not. This is just a reaction to the bounce we're getting. And the put to call option ratio has been coming down because lots of shorts are being closed due to hedging. But we're going to see if this is going to start bouncing again as the market starts to sell off. We're going to see about that. The VIX also might bounce near its 50 daily moving average, which is what we talked about yesterday. So, what's my prediction for the market? Let's go over this. I want to just note that SPY, Tesla, and the QQQ are moving very similarly. If SPY and the QQQ are all rejecting, there's a good chance that Tesla will follow the trend if it doesn't get any major good news. So, what's going to happen? We have the House of Representatives voting upon the agreements to end the government shutdown. Like I said before, if they're against it, that could be bearish and that could cause the market in Tesla to sell off. If they're in favor of it, we're going to see if we get some kind of like consolidation, but then I still think the odds will favor more downside based off technical analysis and also because I think the news is mostly priced in. As the saying goes, buy the rumor, sell the news, meaning that we oftentimes see stocks push and push and push, approaching a big piece of news or data. And then once the news is out, we get the big rug pull. So I think that looking at my prediction for Tesla, we need to get back above 440 to bounce. If we reclaim 440, then yes, we could turn more bullish, looking for a nice reversal. But as of right now, we have a high over here. We came down, lower high, came down, lower high, came down, keeps on making lower highs, and Tesla's looking weak. I think the odds favor a dip to 422 to 420. We'll see if Tesla tries to defend over there, but then it's going to be favoring the downwards direction. Also, know that we could be dipping to 420, if not 415. And if those supports fail us, there's still that gap to fill at 395. So I see some downside risk on Tesla. Although it was trying to form an accumulation, this looks more like a double top to me. And now it looks like Tesla should be retesting 420, the much lower 420s. It's not just because of Tesla stock in itself. The technicals look weak. And I think the news about the government shutdown ending is mostly priced in. But it's not just that. It's also because of what's happening with the overall market. SPY has a rising wedge rejection. So we had this rising wedge and we rejected so far. If we want to be bullish, you want to see SPY reclaim 686. If we reclaim that, we're looking for a bounce. But as of right now, we are rejecting. We're looking for 677 as our support. This has to hold. If it doesn't, we could be dipping to 672 to fill the gap down here. So overall, there's a rising wedge rejection on SPY. Like I said before, if we get the government shutdown that continues and they do not approve the agreement, that's going to be bearish. If they end up ending the government shutdown, we could still drop because the news is already priced in. Like I said, buy the rumor, sell the news. We have a rising wedge rejection. I will change my mind on this if we could reclaim 686. If SPY reclaims that, we could bounce. But as of right now, it looks like we have a lower high rejection and that SPY is rejecting over here. And the odds favor a test of 677. We're going to see if we bounce or not. If we don't, then there could be the gap fill back down to 672. I am favoring downside as the most likely possibility, but we'll see just to be safe. So be unbiased, but just know that that is what the chart is suggesting. Another thing that's leading SPY is the QQQ. Notice that the QQQ is trying to bounce, but we got a big rejection, a double top rejection on the QQQ. We need to reclaim 625-ish around that area. If we reclaim this, we could try to bounce and go back up to 630. That's the bullish case, but it does not look very likely. We keep on rejecting. We have a double top rejection, and we have support at 617. We got to hold this. If we don't, we could be looking for the gap fill back down to 612. So the odds are favoring 612 or below. There's a good chance the QQQ ends up dipping. On the IWM, we also have an inverse head and shoulders like structure, and we're rejecting thus far. So we could be looking for a dip back down towards that 241 area. We're going to see if we bounce or not. But overall, it's going to be favoring 241 to 240. Very similar setup as the QQQ. Now, on the daily time frame, we also have a gap to fill way down here around the low 240s, and we'll see if we bounce. If we don't, we're going to be favoring a move back down to 241 to 240, and we'll see what happens after that. On ES, we also have support down here at 68.38. If that fails us, we could be dipping back down towards the low 6800s. And if that fills us, there's a gap to fill back down to 67.65, very close to that area. ES is rejecting. We're going to be testing 68.38, I believe. We're going to see if it holds. If it doesn't, expect a head and shoulders like pattern to dump towards 6800 for more downside. On NQ, same thing. We're making lower highs and lower lows. We were trying to bounce, but now we're rejecting. NQ looks weaker than ES to me. We need to reclaim 25,700. If we don't, we're favoring 25,400, and also this gap fill back down to 25,200. We're favoring downside for now. Bitcoin is stuck between 101 and 106,000, going back and forth right here. Could be retesting 103,000. We'll see if we reject, but overall, there's downside risk. On Tesla, we're also technically on a downtrend. We're going to be favoring 422 to 420. With the overall market selling off, I think that's going to drag Tesla lower, and I do favor consolidation and downside, or even just downside, regardless of what the House of Representatives ends up doing. So keep that in mind, at least for now. The downside risk is still there. On Nvda, the daily time frame has a gap to fill at 188. And then there's also some weakness on the chart after the news that came out about SoftBank selling their stake in the company. We need to reclaim at least 196 to bounce. If we don't, this is going to be favoring 188 or so, and then we're going to see if we bounce off that. But overall, there is some downside risk on Nvda. Aapl is going to be favoring 271. If it doesn't hold, we could be dipping towards 269, and we'll see what happens. On Netflix, we have a nice double bottom. It looks a bit more bullish to me, but there is resistance around 1161. Could dip before it tries to break out for the 1180s. So just watch that very closely. For a few more tickers, we have MSTR, which is looking more bearish. It needs to reclaim 230. If it doesn't, it may be dipping towards 215. Celsius has an inverse head and shoulders like structure. Could be looking for 46.5. If that breaks, we're looking for 48. Supermicro is on a downtrend. Unless we hold above 40, we're going to be favoring a move back down towards 36.5. On Palantir, we look weak here. We could be dipping towards 178. We could be filling this gap. I do see a risk of some downside. On Rivian, we have a lower high rejection, so it could be dipping back down towards the low 16s. On SoFi, we have an inverse head and shoulders. We could reject right here around the 33 area. Because we could be tipping back down to 31.5, and we'll see if we bounce, but there is some downside risk. On AMD, we have resistance right here at 262.5 and support down here around 248. The daily time frame is showing weakness. There's a big gap to fill down here, and I think we are favoring the downwards direction. So we could be tipping back down towards 250. On ARM, we have a downtrend right now. It could be looking for a move back down to 145. PayPal has an inverse head and shoulders. We're going to see if it bounces, but overall, it might be coming down a bit for 65. Coinbase is on a downtrend. Unless we hold above 309, we're going to be favoring a move back down to 298 to 300. On Amazon, we're favoring 241 as our target. Meta is on a bit of a downtrend. We could be dipping back down to the low 600s. We're going to see if it holds or not. And Google got a lower high rejection. We have to see if 286 holds. If it doesn't, we could be filling the gap back down to 281. Microsoft could also be dipping again back down to the low 500s. And I just want to say that Oracle looks more bearish to me, favoring 220. So watch that very closely. On the VIX, we have a lower high right here. And I think that what's interesting is that we're going to see if we take out that high. If we hold above 18.05, then we could actually be going back up to fill the gap at 19. And we're going to see if this is like a left shoulder, head, and then right shoulder. And if it rejects or if it just keeps going, we'll see about that. But my view is quite simple. It looks to me like for the shorter term, SPY and the QQQ have some downside risk. We could be looking for like 678 on SPY. The QQQ could be looking for 617. If that fails, it's just easily a gap to fill at 612. I could change my mind if we end up breaking 686 on SPY and then 625 in the QQQ. But as of right now, that looks unlikely, and we are favoring downside more. As the whole market starts to dip, Tesla is following the trend. We're technically on a downtrend unless we hold above 440 on Tesla for 4 hours or for close. we're favoring downside. Even if we consolidate here, we could start dipping for 422 to 420, and we'll see if it holds. If it doesn't, there's going to be another very good buying opportunity coming for Tesla stock. All right. So with that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Please enjoy the rest of your guys' days. And I'll be back very soon with another update for tomorrow. Until then, I wish you all nothing but the best and peace out.